The first thing I want to say before we get into the review is that this video is going to be absolutely riddled with spoilers. So if you haven't played the game, just go play it. It's a good game. It's a really, really good game. I think there's really one caveat though. It's a good game if you like the Souls genre. Lies of P took a lot of the already established mechanics of the Souls genre and just kind of made them better. If you like the Souls-like games, then you'll probably like this game. If you don't like Souls-like games or Souls games, you probably won't like Lies of P. Spoiler warning, if you haven't played it, go buy the damn game right now. That's all I got. I have been trying to write this script for a while now, and every single time that I try to write this script, I hate it. I look at it, I'm like, man, this ain't good. It's not very good. It's not very good. It's not very good. And a lot of it is just because I've been trying to imitate a lot of people that actually write video essays because I love listening to video essays. But damn, is it hard. Like they put a lot of work into those videos, and I really, really give props to them. And so as I was trying to write this script, I'd like try to imitate what they're doing, but it's just not really me. It's not my way of doing things. And I really wanted this video to show me and be authentic to who I am. So here we are, we're doing this unscripted, baby. Let's go. So, you know, this might be a little jank at times, but I'm going to do my best in editing to make it make sense. But bear with me because I just kind of wanted to talk about what's good about the game. Okay, let's get into the review. I like the Souls games for two main reasons: combat and exploration and world design. Those two things are what draw me to the game. Lies of P does one of those fantastically and one of those not so much, but we'll get there. Let's talk about the combat of Lies of P. The combat in Lies of P is so perfect. It is just insanely good. All of the mechanics that the Souls games set up, they just kind of took those and said, you know what, we're gonna tweak it a little bit so that it feels unique, and they just made it better. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and re-explain all the mechanics of the game because this is not a review for people that have not played the game, if that makes sense. I'm assuming that you've already played this game and you don't need me to explain the mechanics all over again. So why do I like the combat in Lies of P? Why do I think it's so damn good? First of all, the variety of options is just insane. You guys already know that you can combine handles and blades and make a whole ton of weapons, but on top of that, there's consumables in this game that are just genuinely good, and your freaking mechanical arm or whatever it's called also is just genuinely good, and all of these things are so viable. All of the options, every weapon that I've tested, every consumable, some obviously being better than others, but most of them are really viable and have their uses. And then on top of the variety of actual weapons and tools that you can use, there's a variety of play styles. See, I kind of categorize it into like three. There's like dodging playstyle, there's a deflecting playstyle, and then there is blocking playstyle. And all of them are good. All of them. Now, personally, I like to combine all three because I really do think that that's where the game shines. But if you wanted to play the game using a very specific weapon and a very specific playstyle, you damn well could. You seriously could. You could go through the entire game just dodging with a little tiny knife hitting crits, and you'd be fine. Now, it might be a little bit more difficult at some areas and some enemies, but you'd make it through, and I think you'd do just fine. Now, and one of the things that I was watching recently is I watched a consumable only playthrough, and it really just blew my mind at how viable something as simple as a consumable is. Like, it's insane how much damage and how viable these consumables are doing. And that to me really just kind of showed that every option available in the game is absolutely viable in actually completing the game. Another thing is obviously there are really, really good hitboxes in the game. Never once did I really feel like I was like, man, I shouldn't have gotten hit. I have seen a couple online, but for the most part, it seems very few and far between. And I think that that's really good because if you get the hitboxes wrong in a game in this genre, it's really bad. It's like you're taking a core fundamental aspect of the game and fucking it up. It's kind of sad that I have to mention hitboxes, but they're good. They're very good. There were a couple of attacks in the game that actually left the actual screen, like went out of the screen, but I can only think of two of them. And one of them was in the very final boss, not the final boss, depending on your ending, but it was in the Simon Manus fight, and he swings his weapon overhead and it goes out of camera. So it's really, really hard to actually read when that attack's gonna hit. And the other one was with the Archdeacon Andreas, where he has another similar type move where he goes overhead and it goes out of your screen. But for the most part, all of the enemies that I fought felt really fair, and I noticed this right away from the beginning of the game, where when I fought the Watchman boss and the Master Puppet boss, I found myself just saying like, that was really challenging, but fair. One of the big things for me, for something to feel fair, is that the moves are telegraphed well, but I find that so much more enjoyable than when an attack is so fast fast that you can't react to it. It's just these things are why I just absolutely adore the combat in Lies of P. You have so many different options of playstyles and so many different options of actual tools that you can use. They're all viable, and then the just core mechanics of the game, the hitboxes, the fundamentals of, you know, difficult but fair, like those are all in the game, and I really think that that is why combat is just so good. I know this isn't like a super deep analysis, but I really do just kind of want to talk about why the game is really good and why you should buy it. And no, this is not sponsored. I just think that everyone should be playing this game because I'm freaking obsessed. All right, now let's talk about the world design, and this is where I think Lies of P missed out a lot, and this is where I think they really could have improved on. However, there's a caveat to that, and we'll get to that. The first thing you're probably going to notice about Lies of P is that the levels are linear. They're very, very linear. You're just going from like one hallway, you fight some enemies, you get a shortcut here and there that just leads back to an earlier part in the hallway is what I'll call it. You fight a boss and then you move on. You're basically always moving forward. You only really backtrack when you're like doing a quest, but you aren't gonna find yourself going off into like a side area and opening up like this whole thing. Like the best example I can give is in Elden Ring. You find this really long elevator that takes you down to this underground world, and it just becomes this whole nother, like a whole map that you have to explore that at first was just like, oh, it's just a side area dungeon, but then it's an entire thing, right? An entire world, basically. You're not gonna find that in Lies of P. As far as I'm aware, in the 3 or 4 times I've played through this game, there's only one side area in the actual game, and it's fine. It's pretty short, but like for the most part, it's a fine area, but that's about it. That's the only time that you're ever going to find yourself going off the beaten track. And so you don't really get this aspect of like exploration that really drew me in when I played, for example, Dark Souls 1. When I played Dark Souls 1, because the world was so intertwined and connected with each other, it felt like the world was functioning with or without me there. You know, I didn't feel like there was no moments where it's like there was a box that stopped me from progressing because it didn't want me to go that way. You know, I was exploring the world. I was in the world rather than the world actually being designed around me as a main character. And it really helped that immersive feeling. Lies of P, although it is immersive with its environmental storytelling and lore and things like that, and we'll get to that later, it's not immersive in the way that it's designed, because I find myself just kind of walking forward and not really thinking about it, especially on, you know, subsequent playthroughs. I just kind of press W. I don't even think about it because I don't have to think about where I'm going. And I do think that that is like the biggest flaw of the game, is that you don't have this like feeling of exploration. But it's not all bad, okay? Because there's still some really good world design in Lies of P. For example, there's really good environmental storytelling, and a couple of examples I can think of are at the beginning of the game, you see this like blue carcass monster, and it's pinned against the wall and it's dead. And up until that point in the game, you've only seen puppet enemies. You don't even know what this carcass thing is. You've heard about the petrification disease, but you don't really know what the carcass monsters are. And so you see that and you're like, what the heck? And there's also like this blue letter that you pick up that's like stained in blood, and it's like, oh, it itches, it scratches, and it's really creepy. And it's like, that's really, really good environmental storytelling, because it's like setting up a future event and it's telling you a story through its environment. I really like moments like that. Another example I can think of is with the Watchmen. In the boss arena, there's a bench and there's the word friend or friends. I can't remember if it's plural or not, but it's scratched into the ground, and it really tells that story of, if you don't know the lore of the Watchmen, I really encourage you to actually look at it, but it tells you that he was friends with those children that were bonding with the police bot, you know, the Watchmen, and it showed you that he still cared about them. And I love that, because it's not just storytelling that's just in your face. You know, the game never said, by the way, the Watchman was friends with some kids, you know? No, it told you through its item descriptions and the fact that there was that carving, and the fact that when you kill the boss, he drops the doll that was made for him by the kids, and that he's been carrying it with him the whole time. There's still good things to this world design. The theme, for example, of like the steampunk era is really, really good. I found myself being immersed in the world, even if it was still linear. So on one hand, it's like the linear world design, yes, I wish that it's interconnected. But with that said, they did a wonderful job with the linear design. And there is a good aspect to having a linear world design. The good thing about a linear world design is that you can design the encounters, the combat encounters, very, very well. And what I mean by combat encounters is not just like the bosses, but the enemy placement too, right? You're walking down the path and you see, I don't know, let's just make an example, but you see like a dog and 2 people with a sword. You can design it so meticulously because you know that the player is going to be approaching from one direction. You're not necessarily having to think about them approaching from behind or from below or from the side, because really there's only one path you can take. And so each of the encounters that you experience throughout the game felt really fair. Even the most atrocious one that I can think of was later on in the Moonlight City, when you walk into this room and there's gates that close behind you and you hit like a clown car which is when a ton of enemies, often like 3, 4, and 5 enemies, are all approaching you. That to me was like one of the most atrocious examples of enemy encounters that I didn't like, because I don't like clown cars in these games. I think that they're not good design. But even that felt fair. That felt well designed. Even the worst example. But all the other examples, all the different encounters you come across, they feel good, and it's because they don't have to think about, the player from approaching from all these different directions. So yes, it's linear, but it's not all that bad. The world design still has some good in it. I still found myself being immersed in the world. I found the world feeling fair. And at the end of the day, I would rather have a really good designed world in a linear world, right, than a bad designed world that's interconnected. And we'll get to this later, but I think that this is a big strength of Lies of P. However, for now, let's go briefly over the lore. Now, I'm not an expert on the lore of this game. I've been watching some videos, trying to learn. I've been enjoying it, but by no means am I an expert. However, with that said, the lore is really good. I think that the lore is, first of all, it is a little bit more upfront at first glance. The game is telling you upfront what's going on through its dialogue with NPCs, cutscenes, things like that. It's a little bit more upfront than what you would expect from like a Souls game. However, that doesn't mean that there's not secrets to explore and figure out. And it doesn't mean that it's not intriguing. It's upfront, but it's not all so upfront in your face that you're sitting there like you don't even care. You're not intrigued to learn more. I was absolutely captivated by the world. I wanted to learn more, so much that even when I picked up like one of those notes that had like a ton of text and I had to read, I would read them because I actually enjoyed the story. I found myself being intrigued in the lore. So I liked that there was a balance of like, here's some upfront lore. We're going to tell you the lore. We're going to be more upfront about it. But I also liked that it was intriguing and secret enough to like make me want to learn more and make me go out of the way to learn the lore and not just listen to the NPC dialogue. And I think that that's a really big strength of the game. The actual lore itself is really, really interesting. You should check it out if you don't know it. There's some good YouTubers out there that can do a way better job than me. Go listen to it. I think it's going to make you enjoy the game much, much more. I mean, even if you already enjoy the game, you're going to like it more because of the lore. All right, let's conclude. I know this is kind of short, and as I said earlier, this is unscripted, but I really do think this is the way to go about it. Lies of P has really, really, really good combat. They took everything about Souls combat and just made it perfect. Absolutely perfect. Now, there is a couple problems, but for the most part, it is absolutely perfect. And this is why I think Lies of P is so good, is because Lies of P is not trying to be something that it's not. It's not trying to be this open world, big interconnected exploration thing. It's not trying to be an interconnected world like Dark Souls. It's not trying to be an open world like Elden Ring. It's just trying to be a good game. And it doesn't push its limits. It does everything good. That doesn't mean that there's not places that it can improve on, but it's not so ambitious in its design that it ends up faltering. I don't know if I'm making sense exactly, but if I were to take, Lies of P and stick it in Elden Ring, right? You're going to start finding these blemishes because it's not meant to be Elden Ring. It's not meant to be this interconnected world of Dark Souls. It's meant to be Lies of P. It knows what it's good at. It's good at storytelling. It's good at combat. It makes good NPCs. The world design is good. I mean, it's linear. It's got its issues, but it doesn't push its boundaries so much that you start noticing all these flaws. It's not trying to be a game that it's not. And I think at the end of the day, Lies of P is an absolutely phenomenal experience that knows what it's doing, and it doesn't try to become more than it actually is. And this is why the game is amazing. It uses what it was given, and it works within that perfectly. The game is a lot of fun, and I think at the end of the day, games are meant to be fun. I know nowadays we tend to analyze games to be more than just fun, but it's just fun. It's a fun game. Intriguing stories, intriguing worlds, and fantastic combat. And if you like that, you're gonna like Lies of P. Go buy it right now. Acarson out.